A popular website called thethinkingatheist.com has posted an article on supposed Bible contradictions. As you read, it becomes quite clear that the author never did proper research on the matter, such as the nature of the contradictions presented. Many of them are simply arguments from incredulity or outright logical fallacies. Most of these supposed contradictions are easily answered with minimal research. Let's have a look at some presented in the article. Genesis 1, trees came before Adam, birds were created before Adam, and animals were created before Adam. Genesis 2, trees, birds and animals were created after Adam. But here Genesis 1 and 2 is describing different creation events. Genesis 1 describes the overall creation, whereas Genesis 2 describes the order of creation in the Garden of Eden. Genesis 1, Adam and Eve were created at the same time. Genesis 2, Adam was created first, and woman sometime later. Well, Genesis 1 is describing creation in less detail, while the text from Genesis 2 verse 5 onwards is more detailed. Claiming this as a contradiction is like saying, the title of the article said bus crash, but the text says 2 buses crashed. This is a contradiction. No, the second account is just more detailed. Genesis 1, God was pleased with his creation. Genesis 6, God was not pleased with his creation, which raises the question, how can an omnipotent, omniscient God create something he's not pleased with? God was pleased directly after his acts of creation had finished, and then he was unhappy 1500 years later, when the people of the earth had become wicked. So there's no textual contradiction here. But the author's main objection is this: how can God, being all-powerful, create man which eventually made him unhappy? For this argument to stand up, the author would have to show that it's impossible for God to create beings that are capable of making him unhappy. So the very heavy burden of proof is on the non-theist. Genesis 2, then God blessed the seventh day and made it holy, because on it he rested from all the work of creating that he had done. An omnipotent being required rest? Where does it say God required rest? No, God was giving man the pattern for a week of 7 days, one being a day of rest. This is confirmed in Exodus 20 verses 8 to 11. Genesis 7, the flood waters rose greatly on the earth, and all the high mountains under the entire heaven were covered. The waters rose and covered the mountains to a depth of more than 20 feet. This would require steady planet-wide rainfall at the rate of 6 inches a minute, 360 inches an hour for 40 days and 40 nights, covering Mount Everest under 22 feet of water. First of all, under the biblical creationary perspective, Mount Everest didn't exist. It was the result of the flood. Secondly, the majority of the water came from underground storage, as Genesis 7 verse 11 tells us. The same day were all the fountains of the great deep broken up, and the windows of heaven were opened. Where has all the flood water gone since? Quite obviously, it's in those novel things called the oceans. How is this a contradiction? Genesis 8. Then Noah sent out a dove to see if the water had receded from the surface of the ground. Why did Noah require a dove to find land if he and God were on speaking terms in Genesis 6? This is most pathetic. It's clear this author is not interested in Bible contradictions, but rather appeals to his or her personal ignorance. One reason a dove is used is because the dove is a prophetic sign of the Holy Spirit. Genesis 9. Noah, a man of the soil, proceeded to plant a vineyard. When he drank some of its wine, he became drunk and laid uncovered inside his tent. The only guy worth saving spent his latter days drunk and naked? As the Bible teaches, all have sinned and fallen short of the glory of God. May the author please explain the supposed contradiction here. In Matthew 1, the angel appeared to Joseph. In Luke 1, the angel spoke to Mary. Well, obviously the angel appeared to both people. This pitiful article from The Thinking Atheist shows how far people will go just to reject the Bible. Of course, there are a small amount of valid questions in the article which have been answered by Christians, but the vast majority are refuted with minimal research.